Where are we going? Welcome to this exclusive podcast produced by Spirit Watch Ministries that will show where life in our darkening times is now turning and how you can avoid the detours of deception through the hope of biblical truth. The Lord Jesus in Matthew 24 warned us over 2 millennia ago and how urgently we need to heed him now. Our host is Pastor Rafael Martinez, a seasoned Northwest Indiana-based minister, intercessor, and counter-cult apologist who will help you discern the journey of change we're all on as the last day of the last days now winds down. For more information, check out our Facebook page and our website at spiritwatch.org. Now, here's Pastor Rafael.
Hello, I'm Rafael Martinez, a minister within the Church of God, Cleveland Movement, and the director of Spirit Watch Ministries, a Christian outreach providing biblical discernment in a time of deception. Our podcast is called Where Are We Going? People ask that kind of question these days more and more in our conflicted and confusing and volcanic times. Increasingly, we are bewildered and wondering at where things really are heading. Well, we've not touched on our take on many current events or hot-button issues, but as we've always asserted, Scripture provides for us the clearest answers for such questions. You can trust the Bible. And in its pages, we read that Jesus said definitively when asked of his disciples that kind of question that we should all take heed, he said, that no one deceive you. So Spirit Watch Ministries has been contending for the truth about where we are going since 1993. And I'm thankful to have the privilege of bringing what insight we can bear to it. We offer biblical perspectives on our deceptive times of trouble, and these are perspectives you just won't find anywhere else. And we want to welcome all of our new listeners from Amazon and Google and Spotify. And we thank you for stopping by, and we hope you bookmark us and return again next week when we release our next podcast each Saturday at midnight. It's easy to find us on the internet at our spiritwatch.org ministry website or on Facebook using the search term Spirit Watch Ministries. Links to them will be on our homepage and on our Facebook page for easy access with a couple of mouse clicks. So bookmark us and share the links with your friends, your family, your garbage men, your construction crew. Just help us build our audience. We'd love to see more people hear about our work here. We analyze what Scripture says about deception and how it's a sign of the end of the world, as well as the power of deception as magnified through constitutionally protected and yet religiously abusive groups popularly called cults here in the United States. On today's podcast, we want to begin an exclusive expose on another controversial movement that has been contributing to the spiritual confusion of the Midwestern community it currently flourishes in. Well known there, this movement is almost completely unknown anywhere else. And as always, it's a tragic story of good people in an evil situation, of love twisted by deceit, of the ecstasy of fellowship, and the agony of bullying. In short, it's a cautionary tale of how there are still those who lie and wait to deceive in the name of God. Those who boldly come off as champions of truth and draw so many to follow a path to hell in this world and possibly the next if they don't heed the warnings that we and others have tried to offer. You see, when you speak of such groups as cults being in our very midst, it tends to confuse a lot of people with a sensationalism that clouds perception. Many assume that cults assemble in secrecy in well-hidden compounds in some wilderness stronghold where they cavort with demonic forces. They sacrifice children. They wear some kind of robes, paint and feathers, and they howl under the moon. Well, as the great French philosopher Pepe Le Pew once said, au contraire. They are embedded in our society everywhere and are your friends. They're your neighbors, maybe even your family. They are the barrister at the coffee house and the realtor with an office in town. They are intelligent, idealistic, and sharp people with families and interests just like you. Cult members are quite ordinary people who just so happen to be in the bondage of a quite extraordinary cultic mind control that ties them to their chosen gathering. And unfortunately, that's something that's all too ordinary in our world, as we've been sharing in our podcasts. Due to our ongoing exposés on the Remnant Fellowship and Xenos cults that have kept us really preoccupied since the podcast started in 2021, we've not really been able to focus on this movement properly and give it the attention that discernment requires. But that's ending today, for we think it's high time for the spotlight to be turned upon their activity. Much smaller than either the Remnant Fellowship or Xenos Dwell movement cults, it presents itself as just another band of humble and committed Christians out doing God's work, with a membership not much bigger than the size of the average small evangelical church. But it is vital to understand that they are easily as dangerous and deceptive and destructive as either of these two larger cults. If there's anything I've learned after almost 40 years of ministry to those impacted by cultism in our fallen planet, it is this. When it comes to gauging the spiritual toxicity of any questionable movement, one thing is certain. Where there is smoke, there is always fire. And that is the story of the Ohio-based cultic movement we've come to discuss. Over the years, they've been known in their hometown of Marymount as the Community, the Gladstone Community, the Gladstone Community Church, and now as their latest rebranding as the Madison Place Community Church. The movement was founded by one Zach Kaczynski, a young, dreamy visionary whose charmingly appealing manner comes with a pragmatic drive for organizing followings among his peers. And this is a penchant we'll be discussing in detail more as our podcasts go on. Gladstone began actually as part of a Bible study that Zach and others organized in 2007 as they attended a largely evangelical, charismatic vineyard church in the area. Out of their enthusiastic zeal, cunningly channeled by Zach's domineering influence from its very beginnings, they began what they called the Community. That would eventually become registered as a 501c3 non-profit organization church congregation. A group of young men, women, and young families who have chosen to live together in homes owned by the church in a clearly communal sense. Men live together in some of these in segregated homes, while women in others. Some of the families involved have their own homes. Originally studying and worshiping in their own house church gatherings, the vibrant energy and example would then draw the attention and support of at least two other mainstream churches in the area, the North Star Vineyard Church and the well-known Marymount Community Church there as well. They lent their facilities and moral support and funding to the community's work in its early days. And this work involved creative ways in which they evangelized, reached out to young men and women, and did all they could to engage their community with what they called the gospel of Jesus Christ, reaching out as well to those with substance abuse and also seeking what they could to support mission movements such as the Voice of the Martyrs. Now, as they did that, seeing such zeal among young adults was something that would certainly hearten any pastor or church leader in a decidedly post-Christian and colorfully secularizing world such as ours. So, it's quite understandable that these shining faces and energy was most encouraging to these churches. So that's what led them to offer support to this new band of young Christians who were seemingly caught up in their freely offered and heartfelt espousals of love for God via membership in the community, reaching out to help people. Buoyed by this initially supportive reception, they found the community would come to be called the Gladstone Community because of the floor plan of the home that Zach and others lived in, which is one of the old Gladstone house designs that the ancient Sears and Roebuck merchandising group once offered as designs for package sale, down to the nails and hammers needed for assembly. The Gladstone house was quickly just the first of many other home purchases, largely on or near Grace Avenue in Columbia Township near Marymount and Madisonville. Their living arrangement is empowered by their written covenants to share with one another to remain in that group and adhere to what they call a common purse style of support, where all property is shared and all earnings from a secular employment are pooled into a financial fund that distributes back to members a rather paltry $100 monthly stipend, while making sure their food, shelter, and other necessities, down to even pants, socks, and personal computers, would be supplied by the economic collective. Income from Gladstone-owned businesses, as well as the paychecks of Gladstone members, whose covenants mandate Direct deposits to the Common Purse funding arrangement are what energize the community, which lives, works, and plays together in a tightly organized daily living, where nightly Bible studies, fellowships, get-togethers, and outreaches, fun time, running around, hanging out, are also interlinked by the more serious and more prosaic things such as counseling, prayer meetings, and get-togethers to help people get over their individual issues. And these sort of ties are what drew them ever closer. An old melody song once described this kind of universal connection in this way.
We were so close, there was no room. We bled inside each other's wounds. We all had caught the same disease, and we all sang the songs of peace.
As one investigative writer once described them in a 2016 article, it's Cincinnati's own Haight-Ashbury of radical Christianity. And while their idealistic desire is to live together in a close-knit community of faith, just as the first century Christians did, as described in the New Testament, even as they pose as this harmless band of gentle, loving people, their actual practice is that of a highly manipulative social control they use to impose upon others as directed by their leading elders. It's no different from that which goes on in modern cults today. We were asked to look into this movement about the same time we started to investigate the Xenos cultism. And quite frankly, we weren't surprised to hear these initial claims of extremism among Gladstone's high-handed control, because they sounded exactly like those we began to recognize within Xenos Dwell itself, and something that we've long observed in movements like the Remnant Fellowship, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and Mormonism. For the indoctrination using the community's relational intimacy to radically compel compliance with their beliefs is a harsh reality that daily goes on at all levels of Gladstone's activity. And while they embrace this veneer of Christian orthodoxy and publicly claim to be Bible-believing Christians whose compelling presence stirs jealousy and envy among the dead churches, so they say, that they claim to have risen above, they're hardly unique. Gladstone's activity is yet another cult hidden in plain sight, a tired old adage that finds new life every time such groups are actually discerned. One walks on dangerous ground when shiny-eyed people approach you, rapidly singing and quoting the Bible and inviting you to visit their fellowship, and you uncritically accept their public image as the only substance to their claims. You see, one can't say they are serving a community for the love of God while hating the men and women outside it, and particularly despising those who seem to miss their standards within it, speaking evilly of them while hypocritically smiling at them to assure them how much you care for them. You cannot say you want to uplift and serve humanity if your underlying purpose of life is to actually consolidate your unrelenting authority and power over a group of people you've taught to not question it. Such movements are what Jesus Christ warned of when he spoke of false prophets who seek audiences in sheep's clothing, but who are inwardly what he called ravenous wolves in Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. Such wolves target the flocks of the Christian church incessantly with their cunning wiles. The New Testament is full of such examples of dangerously warped spiritual communities, as well as the warnings of the apostles about their deceptive ways. The Apostle Paul's passionate and cautionary private talk with the Christian elders of the ancient church in Ephesus is one such episode. Therefore, Paul said, take heed to yourselves and to all the flock, among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to shepherd the church of God, which he purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departure savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. Also from among yourselves men will rise up, speaking perverse things, to draw away the disciples after themselves. Therefore watch and remember that for 3 years I did not cease to warn everyone night and day with tears. Well, I don't mind telling you how broken at heart I also share with Paul here. Those of us here at Spirit Watch Ministries and other scattered ministries around the world whose work to expose cults, we cannot help but feel the same way. Our hearts are weighed down by this terrible weight upon us to have to raise the alarms and wave the banners of warning about cultism in some corner of our fallen world. This isn't a quest for intellectual argumentation or sociological analysis. We work hard to create these podcasts to base them on factual reality and not hysteria or intellectual argument. This is indeed the way it is, what we're about to tell you, what we're about to share. And what we've been doing has been nothing less than this, to warn people of that very fact that we repeat again, that when there is smoke, there usually is fire. Zach Kaczynski's creation of what Gladstone loves to call their found family now reflects the seriously grotesque descent into elitist authoritarianism that all leaders of cults embrace in one way or another. The character of the movement today is not how it started out, it seems, however. Its progress from Bible study to house church, calling itself the Gladstone Community Church, as it consolidated its recruiting gains, now presently corporately positions itself there in its community as the Madison Place Community Church. It changed its name about the same time that a 2016 article in the Cincinnati magazine first broke the news of its existence and questionable activities. We'll be sharing and actually have been sharing links to this article on our blog and Facebook page, so you can click on there to read it. But at the heart of the Gladstone community is the puppet mastery of Zach and his small cadre of elders who have successfully maintained a lifestyle all their own within that communal network that's actually doing quite well for themselves. For now, however, further discussions of Gladstone's origins will be held later. We want to now provide for you the insight that a survivor who left the movement will provide for us on what life is like in these present days.
Scott, thank you for coming on the virtual studio today with Spirit Watch Ministries. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you, and you're a very disciplined man, and I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, I appreciate your help today, and I know you've got a rather sensitive but very personal thing, Reverie. I feel you have offered to share about your time in a place unlike a lot of others. It was known as a community several years back when it first got started. Then it was called the Gladstone Community. And just a few years ago, it became the Madison Place Community Church. It's located in the village of Marymount. Marymount? How do you say that? I think that's right. Marymount? Marymount, okay. It's just east of Cincinnati. It's a beautiful place. It's a planned community, and it's got civic charm, and it's a very quaint and very, very beautiful place. It's got, and its progress and its beauty are a perfect refuge for Gladstone to thrive in, unfortunately, because it just looks so much the part. How many people are a part of Gladstone?
Oh, and I'd say probably around, probably around 50 when I was in, but as I understand, it's grown pretty rapidly. So I'm not sure currently. Okay. Number of people.
Okay. That's fine. I've seen some group pictures of them, which is assuming a lot bigger than 50, at least 100 strong or thereabouts. So, but then again, that's anecdotal evidence, but it clearly has grown from what I understand. And, so maybe we can just, maybe you can just share with us a little bit about yourself, how did you come to know about them, and what were you doing at the time, and how did you get involved with Gladstone?
Sure. At the time, I had just moved back to Cincinnati from Fort Myers, Florida. I currently am back in Fort Myers, Florida now, but at the time it was 2012. I had moved back from Fort Myers, Florida to Cincinnati, Ohio. I had lived in Cincinnati previously, but left Cincinnati to take a job in Fort Myers. Moved back after a year back to Cincinnati and took a position with Mercy Hospital in Cincinnati as an IT programmer. And at the time I was returning to Cincinnati thinking that I was going to get back with my ex. And then when I got back, they had already started dating somebody else. So that didn't work that well. But we shared a lot of the same friends and the same crowd. So when I came back to Cincinnati, I really didn't have anything to come back to, and I was pretty vulnerable in a vulnerable place. And I frequented a gym in the area. I was there every morning, and there were these two guys that always struck up conversation with me. And they actually asked me if I wanted to come to their Bible study, and I was kind of like, I had been away from the church a bit, but I was open to it. And since I had no real community again, and I was starting from scratch, I'm like, this might be a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I started going to their Thursday night Bible studies, which at this time were held in the house, the Gladstone house, which was a greenhouse on Grace Avenue, incidentally. So, and it was just unlike anything I had ever seen. These people, they just, usually when you're the new person at a church, you're kind of, you're welcome, but people just, let you do your thing until you get your groove. And this was totally different. They immediately, people would just come out of their way to talk to me and come out of their way to tell me how much that they loved and cared for me and go out of their way to pray with me. And it was unlike anything I experienced before in my life. And it just became a place that I guess, I was there every Thursday night, and on the weekends I would, if I was available, I would just spend the weekend there and sleep on a couch to be with these people. And I'd go to their church services on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how I got in. As far as living with the community, I don't know if you want me to get that far into the story.
Go ahead. I mean, whatever you'd like to share. I mean, it sounded like a very communal, very immersive place. It was, it was a very, very close-knit group of people, wasn't it? That seemed very, very caring, very benign, very uplifting. I mean, that's what I understand it was.
Definitely. And I had, it was probably around May 2012 when I started showing up. And, something that had come up in conversation with, I'm not going to use full names here, but sure. I'll say the current elders of the church. I'll just give you his initial. He was the guy who I had met at the gym, and we were very close friends. And he just went out of his way to spend time with me. And I talked about, what does it look like to move in? This was around July of 2012. Mm-hmm. And so within a few months, I was seriously looking at moving in, and he had explained to me, what it took, which was like, hey, there's this thing we call common purse, which was totally, new term that I'd never heard before growing up in church. Common purse, explained it, was pretty much all of your income is given to that community, the church. Your bills are paid for from that, and then you get a small stipend, spend amount like $100 a month is given back to you. And that is for your gas, and for any fellowship you might have, like going out to eat for the month. But your food and your lodging was taken care of as part of, being part of the community, as well as your bills were paid out of that.
Right. Now, was this the only community there, or was it just a group of men? From what I understand, or from what Zach, the leader of Gladstone, Zach, I mean, there has to be a leader to any movement. I believe his gentleman's name is Zachary Kaczynski, is that how it said?
Correct.
Yeah, Corey Foy, he wrote back in 2014, he said that they began in 2007 as a small group of young men who were living in an apartment together in Mariemont, and that you pretty much corroborate what he's saying here, that we mentioned that we're all part of a Bible study and that we're challenged in wanting to really live our Christian faith as fully as we could. So they committed to study, to prayer, to challenge, and for essentially community. And he said as time went on, dozens of men and women joined us. How did that work out? From what I understand, there's several other houses actually maintained by Gladstone as a community of people living in different places. Is that correct?
Correct. So there would be like men's houses and women's houses. there were a couple of families that had their own houses. At the time, I believe there were 2 or 3 married couples with children that had houses as well. What it was is they would buy these houses that were kind of run down at ridiculous rates, right? And then they would use the workforce within the community, and the manpower in the community to flip these houses into, really nice homes. But it was like 2-bedroom homes, right? And there were 8 guys or 8 girls to a house. So
really,
you're doing the math. That's 4 guys to a bedroom and bunk beds with 1 closet. I can't imagine how the girls did it, but and usually 1 bathroom, right? So you really didn't get, I don't know. I can't think of any house that I think the Gladstone house actually had 2 bathrooms, but the one that Zach lived in, incidentally.
Okay.
But I would say at the time that I was there, probably about, I'd say 8 houses going. They had probably about 3 female houses and 5 male houses. I may be wrong in the numbers there.
Okay.
It was like 8 guys to a house, 2 bedrooms.
So this wasn't an issue where a bunch of men were all living together. Obviously, I think they really felt a certain propriety and keeping the sexes distinct, separate. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kept separate, and at the time, that love bombing that I've learned that word since, that occurred when I first came in. It just felt like the natural next step. Hey, these people are my family now. I want to be around them 24/7. I want to help them in any way possible. Because I was actually, I worked at Mercy Hospital. I was pulling in pretty close to, 90, 95 a year. And I was thinking, I could really, help these people out. And in return, I get this, this friendship and this love. And I probably could have kept coming around as a casual visitor, because there were people that did that. There were people that showed up on Thursday night for services and went back to their homes and went back to their jobs, that weren't living in the community, but they seemed to not, be as well connected because you're not around these people 24/7.
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, when you moved in with them and started living by apparently a community rule, a standard of some sort. You mentioned common purse as being kind of the financial arrangement, but what other distinctive things that they really? How did they work out community living together? How did they do that?
Well, they had like the prayer room in the basement of the Gladstone house where you would all sign up for shifts for that. And it was kind of like expected, where there would always be someone there praying 24/7. They would, have different houses would host dinners with, host a different house for dinner. And that would be a big deal. Like, oh, we're going to have this house over tonight. And that was, most of the socializing was done within the community. So it was really unheard of to be like, well, I'm going to go hang out with my parents who live in Mason tonight. That wasn't something really. That's what you're going to do. Once in a while that would happen, but most of the socializing was done with one another. And it did something outside of the community. Like if I had a work function I had to go to, as far as like a retirement party or something like that, it would be expected that I would take somebody with me from the community. Sort of. And they would say, well, that's because Jesus never sent his disciples out by themselves. They would use that. I do remember my grandmother passing away and them having me bring somebody from the community driving all the way from Cincinnati to Upper Michigan, and home. And so I'm dragging this person that my family has never met to a funeral, someone he doesn't even know. So it's kind of weird, that, hey, our son's showing up to his grandma's funeral. We've never seen this other guy. And I just said, oh, he's just a friend from church. I didn't really say, I was required to do this.
Right.
And I didn't really question, hey, I'm good friends with this guy. We're going to take a road trip.
Right.
You know?
But were there times you might have felt that maybe this guy was there for less to do with fellowship, as nice as it was for them to be with you? Was it more like perhaps an instance of surveillance, of monitoring you, of keeping you in check and making sure you didn't do something that would violate their rules? Is that what that's what it kind of sounded like? I mean, why would they do that otherwise?
I mean, it didn't occur to me at the time. Looking back now, I'm like, yeah, they were afraid probably because I was new, that if my family got maybe me alone and talk some sense into me, that I might change my mind.
Uh-huh.
But it wasn't a time that we were, he was always there with me. I would never have alone time with the family. And if he was not in the same room with me, he'd be making friends with my family, other family members. Everybody, great, because, it's a spiritually mature guy that's hanging out with my son and helping him with his spiritual walk.
Right.
So, yeah.
But was he about your age or was he younger?
I was a little younger. I went in, I was pretty old. I'll use the term. I was pretty old for going into Gladstone, right? I was 2012, so I was 38 at that time. And usually people coming into the Gladstone community are coming like right out of college or right out of high school. So I was considered a little older, but that didn't seem to make a difference. Yeah.
So this young man that went with you was basically a young man. Yeah, he wasn't I'm not calling you aged, but he was certainly a lot younger than you, and he was purportedly there to keep you in line as a spiritual head of some sort.
Right. I think he's like 26. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Definitely less life experience than you, for sure. But,
yes, definitely.
But that doesn't seem to be too much of a problem in a place like Gladstone, because from what I understand, this kind of monitoring, this kind of surveillance, for lack of a better word, just seems to be part of what it is to live in a communal setting where you're not allowed really to be yourself in a sense that you have an individuality and an autonomy where you can live and make your own choices, live by your own conscience. They really want you towing a line there. And it sounds like something that they really, that Zach and the others seem to feel is very important to maintain.
Yeah, and then that actually brings me to something I actually remembered the other night. I used to train in mixed martial arts. I was a combat medic in the military, and after the military, I had a lot of aggression, and
Sure.
So I martial arts a bit, and so that was a lot of my identity, right? A lot of my T-shirts, a lot of my clothing reflected that, the whole UFC persona, and I had a couple fights under my belt in 2012. So a lot of my T-shirts had stuff like that on there, like Muay Thai. And I remember coming back from work one day to my room, and there were a bunch of like colored T-shirts on my bed that had no design on them. And they said, "Isn't this great? The sisters bought you these T-shirts." And my other T-shirts I could not find.
Wow.
It was something a little subtle like that. It was like a little piece of control that I did a little freak out check in my head at that time. But then I thought, okay, I kind of get why they're doing this. They kind of want me to,
pacify?
Maybe my identity is too aggressive, and maybe I need to tone it down, you know? And this is maybe the next natural step that God wants me to calm myself and to appear more loving by just wearing regular colored T-shirts instead of these fight stuff on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I find it ironic to hear that Zach spends many, many hours at nighttime playing, multi-role, fighting in, online video games. Which I find kind of rather strange, but these are the kind of closely knit contradictions that are quite normal in a place like Gladstone and any movement like that? I mean, did you see any other things similar to that may have made you maybe scratch your head and say, something doesn't quite add up here? I mean, to me, I think that is one thing to expect you to shed aggression while the leader played games of aggression. It's just kind of very strange. Did you see anything else like that there?
There was an instance where I was still keeping in contact with my ex, and I would go out to dinner, and they basically told me I would have to stop talking to that person. And this was 2013, 2014. And it was innocent, I wasn't like, it was just friends hanging. And we would just catch dinner once in a while. And I remember them wanting me to write this email and sending it. So I did it because, I thought that's what God would want me to do.
Yeah.
And I remember,
yeah.
I remember it like ripping my heart up.
Yeah.
And them not understanding why I was like in tears for like a whole day over it.
Yeah.
Them not understanding why that ending this relationship, this friendship, why it meant, that much to me. Them looking at me like I don't understand that. And I remember that's something that sticks out in my head. And I did it because that's what I thought that God would want me to do, because it was coming, directly from them. It was anytime they told you something that was challenging, it was like, if you don't follow this, you're not following God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it certainly, again, sounds like exactly the sort of thing that these groups do. I mean, and Gladstone, unfortunately, is what we're learning, what we've come to learn is just that kind of place. I mean, now, Zach also wrote that he said, when the Gladstone community began, we were still attending a congregation in Loveland. But in 2010, we were blessed by the church leadership to become a church fellowship all our own with our own leadership. To this day, we share a relationship with that congregation as well as many others, particularly Mariemont Community Church, where we minister together, often worship together, and most importantly, have deep personal friendships. Leadership is shared by many in the community. And about the time I believe you came into the community, was about the time that they were probably at the most closest approach with the Mariemont Church there. So, it seems to me that the community could not have gotten off the ground without the kind of basic, without the subsidizing they basically took from not one but two churches in that area, and apparently they took their cues from them, and they apparently provided for them a lot of help. Did you see a lot of that there as well?
So Mariemont Community Church is kind of like this old traditional staple in Mariemont, like this big, beautiful building.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of at the time, kind of like an older congregation. And I remember them coming behind Gladstone, kind of, and supporting them, giving them use of the building on Thursday nights, moving out of that house in Gladstone to an actual church. And we always did like dinner prior to church too. So they were, using that space, using the kitchen, using all of that. And, just coming behind them and supporting them. I'm not sure, I can't speak to finances, but I can speak to the fact that this big, beautiful church, was being, Gladstone had use of that on Thursday night, and that kind of really opened it up to bring it to the mainstream, I would say, because I remember those Thursday night services that used to be like 50 or 60 in the Gladstone house living room turned into like 120, 130 on Thursday nights.
At the church, the community church.
Correct.
Okay. So apparently, they had convinced a lot of people that this really was just a very benign, just simple bunch of Jesus freaks, for lack of a better word. They just really wanted to live a community life and a rule based around communal sharing and the common purse, as you mentioned. So he also goes on to say that much of our time, resources, and energy goes into, and this is from the same document. This is Zach, the founder's writing. Much of our time, resources, and energy goes into helping young men and women out of drug addiction, particularly heroin addiction, or orphan care around the world, and support for the suffering church. We believe the gospel of Jesus Christ is the answer the world is looking for, but we realize that for the words to be believed, people must first see in our lives its truth. So we partner with a variety of ministries to help us do this work, such as Back-to-Back Ministries, Teen Challenge Cincinnati, Voice of the Martyrs, to name a few. So from that is, in keeping what you were just mentioning about the young people, it sounds like Gladstone devotes a lot of its energy and recruitment among the young and impressionable and those in recovery and needing structure in their life. So that seems to be like a foundational point of growth for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you had people that were coming in off the streets that had nowhere else to go, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And really didn't have an option, basically, whether to recover or leave. And they received the same love bombing that I received. And I know for a fact I don't know if they still do this, ran what they called the Lazarus Rooms ministry out of one of the houses there, where they had a house or a room that was specifically set aside for detox, where they would lock up the person's keys and wallet, and just leave them in that room to detox.
Yeah, I heard about that. I've heard that this was something that had been ongoing for some time. I don't know if it's still going on.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do know that I was one of the only medical staff there, and I did not have involvement in that because that's after I left. Right? So you have somebody who's dependent upon heroin locked up in a room, without medical care. Right. Yeah. And that does speak to some of the other, and I might be digressing here a bit, some of the other unsafe practices. In 2015, I actually joined the work crew, and started doing the work crew instead of hospital work. And there was several times where we were scraping lead paint off of old houses. We had some masks and things like that, but there were times like I had a wheelbarrow full of bricks tipped over on my leg more than once. I was ran over a few times by wheelbarrows full of cement. I had the rebar. And so there was like some really, you have kids working construction basically, right? So really unsafe conditions, and I'm not sure, and we have power tools, table saws, all that stuff. And I'm not sure the regulation that was around that as far as OSHA. Pretty sure it wasn't. I never saw anything regarding to that. But it was very unsafe work conditions. We had 4 men on the work crew that all ended up with MRSA, who are all on the work crew. And me being previously a combat medic, would make my rounds at night before going to bed to drain the abscess sites. MRSA. And bandage them up. I was playing war medic again. Because most of these people, they're working for the community. They don't have health insurance.
Well, why didn't they, with a common purse, why couldn't they get medical care?
Right. I mean, I ended up taking one guy here once because his abscess got bad. And they ended up giving him, some antibiotics that he ended up being allergic to. Right. So this rash all over his body, and the elders of the church approach him and ask what unconfessed sin he had. Because I was in the room when I was like treating him, and they all come in and they're like, so they kind of pointed to his sin rather than, hey, he was prescribed something that he's allergic to.
They said the allergic reaction was a sign of sin.
They didn't know what the reaction was. They just assumed that he had broken out in these hives because he had some unconfessed sin, and that was what was asked by the church.
Wow. And these are work crews set up for part of the businesses that the community ran?
Correct. So
okay.
So
they actually started businesses now, so they've got actually a pretty strong economic element there in the community.
Right. They had a catering business. Now they have a coffee shop, which I think it's just called the Madison Place or something. It's right across the church. They had a lawn service called Handy Lawn Guys and Handy Home Guys, which was home repair. And then they had the work crew, which actually worked within the community on the current houses.
Wow. So these are licensed businesses, supposedly with business licenses, supposedly being had in some manner of regulation, but allowing all these unsafe work practices to go on all around in the community.
Correct. Wow. I mean, I speak to the injuries I saw in my injuries. I'm sure there were more. I've been gone since 2015. But yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, and it makes you wonder, like, well, why would you want to drive people in that way? Why did they want to be careful? And I mean, I guess the principle of work is just really important in a place like Gladstone. I mean, where they really feel like, to prove your worth, that you just really need to be just really at hard labor almost. And even if the practices are unsafe and unsanitary.
Yeah, we had 6 working days. So it wasn't like if I worked 5 days in my regular job when I was still working for Mercy Health, I would have to work Saturday because that was biblical.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
Right. So they really, and so no one said anything. They just went along with it. And what happened if somebody, started getting lippy about it or started complaining? What would have been the reaction, or what was the reaction? Did you see anything like that? I mean, that's a pretty tough thing to be doing, to be driving people while they're sick to work and get injured and stuff like that. Was there any problem with the workforce there?
I didn't really see too much rebuttal. I seen people that got moody once in a while, but they just would get a talking to. I'm not sure exactly what was said, and they would step back in line. We had a few guys that had bipolar issues, who would have bad days, and they would put them on more of a menial chore, but they never, you really couldn't. The only way you could get out of work crew was to be sick and to really be sick,
Yeah.
But I didn't really see anyone storm off and say they wouldn't do something, right? Because there was the mentality. I mean, you were already whipped if you were there. Pretty much.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, well, you're right. I mean, it sounds like you already were of the right frame and right mindset that, everything you're doing is a spiritual exercise for God, and this is part of supporting this community, and you need to be a part of doing that. It's just in obedience to what Jesus has said. Now that leads us into some of the other teachings that sets them apart. They seem to have this rather harmless public evangelical dogma, but they practice some really hidden forms of doctrine that are powerful forms of spiritual domination. You mentioned common purse. I remember in a past conversation you mentioned a specific term that has a lot of weight in Gladstone. Is what's called the work for community. Could you maybe a little share on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? The work for community?
The work. There was a term called working for the community, in which there was a discussion of how you need to be working for that community. And I think that's what we're talking about, the very thing. You remember that we had a discussion about that some time back, about how there was this compulsion, as you just mentioned, that you needed to be out working and laboring to make sure the community supported.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like 6 days a week, Sunday you could rest, but your Sunday was not like you couldn't just lay in bed. You needed to do that with like fellowship and intention.
Yeah.
And like if I was working outside of the community, so I'm doing my 5 days a week, I'd have to work the 6th day, but also I could not have more than 1 day a year vacation. Vacation a year. That's what it was. Even if I was offered, PTO for 2 weeks for my job plus paid holidays, which I was. So those paid holidays, if they weren't considered holidays in the community, were work days.
Yeah.
So if, let's say I got off President's Day because I worked for Mercy Health, they gave us everything off. Then I was working in community on President's Day,
Yeah.
If I got, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and the day after Christmas off, I was working, Christmas Eve and the day after Christmas, if I was there, and not out.
So everyone was just slaving along. What was Zach and the elders? What were they doing during all this? Were they all sharing that same load? Were they basically out there painting and cleaning up garbage like everybody else? Or what were they doing?
Zach didn't get his hands dirty that much. He walked around a lot. Would walk around and kind of get, hey, what's going on? He would make his rounds, but I've never really seen him sweat. Elders was in charge of the work crew, and he worked hard. There were a couple of those elders that worked hard, and then you had some that were administrative, and they did their thing. But then there were others that were like Zach, where they just walked around and talked, or they didn't really have the calluses on their hands. Yeah.
But what they would do is they would be really good about having Bible studies and making sure that you were there to hear them talk and preach and do all their thing, right?
Oh yeah, they're great at that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Everybody's got to have an audience. That's the truth, It's like they say in George Orwell's book Animal Farm, where the animals, if you remember the story, it's a story about, it's a fairy tale, of course, but it's written by the great English novelist who wrote this story about animals who rebelled and expelled their oppressive farmer and created their own little society, in which everyone would be equal and everyone would be together, and increasingly throughout the whole book, things just get worse and worse. It becomes more and more extreme. The leaders, the pigs become the leaders, and then ultimately they become authoritarian and driving. And they would paint rules on the side of the barn, which were supposedly explaining what they really were about. And one of the rules was at the start of the community was that all animals are equal. And then later on, as things get really bad and more intense, one morning the animals woke up to find that the rule had been added to. And they always would wonder if it was just them just not remembering that they had missed this part of it, but they woke up to find it saying all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
Correct.
And that certainly sounds like the kind of top-down leadership that's there in Gladstone, because it sounds to me like if no one's able to question what they're doing, they just have to slave away. What are they getting out of it? Why would people stay in something like that? Scott, explain it to me. Why did you stay?
Well, I stayed because I had that sense of, my father passed in 2014. And these people were my family, right? And I believe that I was doing what God wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times where I left and came back. One was the same day. And,
yeah.
And one was, there was a couple of months in between where I came back. And part of that was because I did have issues, alcohol. And that's why I stayed, because I stayed sober when I was in community, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I wasn't like the perfect guy in this story. I want that to be clear.
Sure.
I was still a human. But, I didn't use when I was in community,
Right.
I didn't have that option.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of why I say, I knew that I didn't have the modality today, like going through the 12-step program, getting the support I needed. Community, was great for that piece, but there was no treatment, right? I was really a person dealing with the substance abuse problem, which was never addressed in community. I'm sure there are the guys who have overcome heroin, and their drug addictions, but where are we getting the follow through within community? Because there was nothing to be like, maybe Scott, maybe we should get you to a 12-step program, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of that. It was prayer is the ultimate fix. You still have to do inner work on yourself. You can't just pray the drink away. And if I offend anybody, I apologize, but it's true. You have to, go through like your, alcoholism, drug addiction. That's the tip of the iceberg. What lays below that, right?
Right.
There's a lot of wreckage that you need to repair.
Right.
And if I just stopped drinking, it was evident, because when I left the community, what was I doing, right? Drinking.
Mm-hmm. Right. And what they would do in communities, they would kind of say, well, look at what we are doing. We're changing lives. We're cleaning. We're helping people get clean and get free by the gospel. But really, in the end, it was just a bunch of religious busy work they did to keep you so preoccupied that you would have no time to dwell upon your issues, but just follow along, a well-grooved track for you to be in and fit in. And the community, everyone there is all looking to you to kind of be there for that and be with that plan. And so, but you can only go so far with that, can't you? You can't outrun your demons just by digging ditches 6 days a week, can you?
No, I mean, it helped that you didn't have money, right?
Yeah.
Right? Incidentally, the elders do get paid more of money. So it was $100, I believe, for if you were not an elder, and I think it was like $150, $200 if you were an elder. And of course, getting a little more back from your common purse. Okay.
Wow. So, like I said, there are some animals that are more equal than others, it seems. Here's what's so puzzling about places like that, about Gladstone, others like that. We've been talking about other groups like Remnant Fellowship and Xenos and Christian Fellowship, so to speak, in just up the road there from me in Columbus. They all seem to toe the line and really put out this really squeaky clean image of themselves as these really biblical, biblically founded groups, when you and I were talking in the past about this, you'd mentioned that Gladstone appears to come off as this really biblical, biblically based church. They have what they call a true gospel, and in order to be spreading that true gospel, you have to be a true follower. Do you remember those terms as used and what that really meant?
Yeah, I remember that, because if I would hear it referred to, hey, my parents aren't following the true gospel. Not my parents, but people would prefer their parents to that way, right? They're not following the true gospel if they were going to another church that Gladstone didn't agree with, right?
Ah, okay. Sounds familiar.
Right. They would use technology a lot. That would get thrown around a lot. You know,
Okay. So what was the true gospel then? If somebody's parents weren't following the true gospel, what was it? According to Gladstone, I guess they have the right interpretation. What would that have been?
I believe in their eyes, it was basically the true gospel was like complete denial of self, was financial, and in their eyes was financial and identity. And then, anything else. And there's little pieces of, Jesus himself, if you can't, leave your mother and father and follow me, then I'm roughly translating, you don't have to play the kingdom. But, I mean, that was kind of an illustration to the rich man of what willing, right?
Right. He was told by Jesus to leave his riches and family and come follow him. That's from what I understand, what you're getting at, right?
Exactly. They're taking that literally, right? And we had a situation, and it was the weirdest thing to me. Like, they called me up on a Saturday morning, and they say, hey, we need to ride with some girls up to one of the houses, or not the houses, but up to their parents' house, because this girl stayed the night there, and her parents won't let her leave. They slashed her tires. They don't want her.
Wow.
And they needed a guy like the muscle. I'm like 6 foot 230, and I was practically the biggest guy in community. Most of the guys weren't that big, and so they drove me up there. I kind of stood like ground around the car until the girl was comfortable enough to leave, and we got the spare on. I drove it to a tire shop and drove that car back while the girls returned. But her parents were so concerned about her involvement that they were, trying to keep her from returning by slashing her tires.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And to me, that was like another kind of, there was always like these little things that didn't sit right. It was never one big thing, right? So if it had been one big thing, I probably would, and it ended up being a big thing, right? In the end, why I left.
Right.
But there were little things that I could kind of be like, oh, she's just making the ultimate sacrifice. Oh, I'm just doing what God wants me to do by breaking off this previous relationship.
Right.
It brought me pain. I thought, hey, I have to hurt a bit to grow. But I've never involved in a church or where once somebody leaves, they're just this like complete wreckage and trauma associated with it, and spiritual trauma. Yeah. Right. You can go to your local church in town and decide you don't like it in a few months, and you can leave, and you don't have like PTSD over it. Right.
Yeah. Right.
And that's happening there, So there's something is not right if this is the result of people who are leaving.
Of those, I'm sure, and from what I understand, you've known quite a few people who have left or are trying to leave. Is this a common experience that they have, that their interpretation of the gospel, according to Zach and the Gladstone, is that you have to deny yourself and just become this slaving drone to prove yourself that you're a follower of Jesus, and no matter what it takes. And right. Everyone's coming out, like you said, just verbally pistol whipped and beaten. Is that a common thing you're finding along a lot of people?
That is a common theme.
Goodness. Wow.
It took me a while after leaving to call it what it was. Actually, it took me I left in 2015 and I couldn't come to terms with calling it a cult until probably about 2018.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to believe the best. But I do remember starting to study and read a book regarding about spiritual abuse, and then reading that book, it's like there was so much in there that I with, and just crying while I read this book, and I'm like, this is exactly what happened. And for me, I left Thanksgiving 2015. My mom been diagnosed with cancer. I wanted to go see her for Thanksgiving, and I left to go home, and they called me 20 minutes down the road and asked why I didn't ask permission to leave to go see my dad.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I went home and I came back, and when I came back, there was this, like, my heart, like, detached. I was getting treated differently. And then I was asked my car to the community, by one of the elders. And I didn't answer. It seemed like it was, like, if I chose the other way, that I was not once again obeying God. The idea behind me signing over a car and becoming a community car is I no longer would have ownership, and I could not use it when I needed to use it. Right.
Right.
There. So I faked sick. I faked sick while everybody was in church, and I packed everything up in my car and I left, right before Christmas 2015.
Yeah. Wow. And you, I mean, I think you would certainly acquire substantial support at this point. I mean, there you are trying to be, strong man, trying to, be a leader, be a medic for them and all that. And you already financially given so much to them, and they still wanted your car.
Yes.
Wow. Unbelievable. That's just really incredible. So that was part of it all. That was really the kind of the moment in which you finally realized you just had to get out of there, and that was it. From what I understand, not too long before, there was an elder that took you out to dinner, and I guess he was supposed to discuss your reservations, but he didn't, being critical about your concerns.
Yeah, I went out to dinner, and this was before the whole Thanksgiving thing. And I talked to him openly about the community. And at the time, he acted like he totally understood and understood my concerns and where I'm coming from. And then a couple of days later, with a couple of the elders in the room with me, they just made the whole story around I was being obedient, and that I was let Satan run my mind, basically.
Wow.
And it was not having a discussion with them the first time. It seemed like I was having a discussion with a friend, and 2 days later, it seemed like I was on a firing squad.
Wow. And where was Zach? Was Zach ever involved in this kind of punitive treatment of you, or was he the one directing it, or was it just something the elders took on themselves?
He might have directed them, but he was not in the room at that time. I never really had the best relationship with Zach. It seemed like everybody had a good connection with him, but I did not, and I never really, a lot of the other elders I had a really good connection with, until that moment. But I really something in my spirit allowed me to have that connection with him. I never was, I can really vibe with this guy.
Okay. You're breaking up a little bit there. Sorry. Just missed the last couple of, could you repeat that again?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. I never really connected with Zach as far as a heart connection. Really I was always uncomfortable around him. But the other elders, I had good friendship and connection with. So him coming into that situation and having that talk with me, I know he probably thought, hey, that's not going to have an effect on him. It's going to have an effect on people that he's bothered.
Okay. Yeah. So really, like I said, Zach set this, it wasn't Zach, but maybe it was. I'm pretty sure it sounds like. So Zach and the others set up this hierarchical system where, he had all these guys over to just monitor and criticize and control you to their heart's content. And you sounded to me like you just had just enough wherewithal to say, hey, I'm out. I've had enough of this. But it took you so long to get over that. And what was reading that book, or what really helped you move beyond the impact, and what really helped you to really start healing from all this? I mean, I know everyone that leaves a place like that certainly is a work in progress, as we all are, but you guys have your own unique this chamber of horror you've had to struggle with something like this. What's been really helpful to you to kind of move beyond that?
Well, I will say I left in 2015, and then I still went back in 2017 because I still just had that strong connection. I went and worked with him on the work crew 2 times in the summer in 2017, and then I was considering going back after everything that had happened, because my mom had died in 2016, so there was still this rolling ball of trauma of life happening. And, so I was considering coming back. They, were considering taking me back, but it was okay, you're going to have to go to Pure Life Ministries first and then come back to us. And I didn't really give them an answer, but I didn't want to do that. So 2018, I guess I kind of just came to that realization where another guy had contacted me that left and hooked me up with his pastor, counseling with him. So I started there, and that was my realization moment, right? That was my realization moment of that, hey, I had been abused, and I don't find myself as that anymore. It's not part of my identity. It was until I'd say last year. July of 2021, I really started doing a lot more inner work, with a therapist, where I could start to detach myself from the feelings associated with that trauma, because I was letting it be part of my identity with all the other stuff, right? So you asked who I was, who at that time I would give you 3 examples of trauma in my life, ranging from the military to childhood sexual abuse to spiritual abuse. That's who Scott was. So it was kind of a process of working on all those and detaching my identity from that, and realizing the more I detach from those feelings and emotions associated with that trauma, the more I have space and love to help others heal. If I keep attaching myself to that old stuff, I'm limiting my usefulness to God and to others. Right. And that was a call for me. I'm not living out my full potential as,
And you're not really able to come to your own personal peace with yourself, finding your own personal identity apart from that. That's so important in healing, isn't it? To understand that you are more than just scar tissue.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're loved by God. There's healing He does, there's renewal He does. And it takes a lot of work, though. It takes a very intentional thing to really apply to yourself to really get a hold of. And I'm so glad to hear that you've done that, Scott. And I appreciate what you share with us this evening. And as we close this here, and I really appreciate taking the time to do this for us this evening. I want to ask you, what would you say to people questioning their involvement with the group? I mean, let's say maybe as some of your friends from there who might somehow, some way tune into this on the podcast, which I think is probably going to happen. We're hoping it will. But we really would hope that people can get an alternative perspective of their involvement there. What would you say to them? What kind of personal message or encouragement would you want to send along to them?
I would make reference to what I had said earlier, which does not make sense for when you leave a church to be this traumatized. That's not what the gospel is about. That's not what the true gospel is about that they like to refer to. I would also tell them that I have an extra bedroom if they need somewhere to stay, because a lot of people are stuck there, right? They've been giving all their finances. They don't have a family to run back to.
Yeah.
that's the only family that they have. In some cases, they don't have, their parents are no longer alive, or their parents are no longer speaking to them because of the situation. So they have no choice. And that's right. They have no income. They have no choice. They're getting, food and shelter from the community. So it's pretty much, do I leave this community that is damaging my spirit, or do I go back on do I go on the streets?
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know. I wouldn't call it the lesser of two evils, but
sure.
I'm more than happy to work with them, to help them through that.
Great. And so are we. I mean, we certainly are willing to. I mean, we would love to hear from anyone who wants to email us or call us, or as we share how to get in contact with our own ministry, and we can certainly have them be connected with you and others, because you are certainly not the only person who's left. There are others we're going to be talking to in the future, and other folks who had similar experiences, for which we've all come to be all too painfully aware. And Scott, I really hope and pray that we can start seeing the kind of things that need to be seen, and that all these people truly come out and re-examine things as you said they should.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, Scott, thank you so much for your time this evening. We appreciate that, and we hope to have you back again soon. And
right.
We're wanting to do a lot more. We intend to do a lot more about Gladstone in the future. And this is the first of several podcasts we want to do. And once again, thank you for the time you've had here today. Any last thoughts?
Oh, no. I mean, if you're listening and you're there, I'm not, I live this experience, got other people who will talk. They live this experience, but this is not some kind of crazy story we're making up to make, somebody look bad. These are truths. These are things that happen. So if you're there and you're getting that twinge in your heart and you're starting to question stuff,
yeah,
get out before it's too late. I have no idea, as this ball keeps rolling, as they continue progressing and they continue growing, it's not a safe place to be. So I will. And if you have a friend or family member that is in, do your best to encourage them to listen and to support them if they're willing to leave. Don't just tell them to leave and not give them a roof over their head or food in their stomach.
Absolutely.
Do what we've got to follow through.
Amen. And that's what it's all about. True religion is to not, to not see, as James says, to allow the broken, such as widows and children, suffering alone. I mean, we need to be true community, a community that doesn't judge, but a community that loves, a community that accepts, one that doesn't make you turn you into a worker drone, and drive you until you wear out. I mean, that's not the abundant life Jesus came to give us. And Scott, thank you for sharing those thoughts. We appreciate that this evening.
No problem.
We trust that our time here with the testimony of Scott is showing that the smolder of Gladstone's cultism, long seen and recognized by too many who couldn't quite define it, has become a conflagration that cannot be ignored any longer. This surely has gotten our attention, and to the glory of God and the deliverance of the captives for the sake of the gospel and its abundant life that needs to be shot within its sunny corridors, we're going to be spending a lot more time here sharing original investigative work that only the stories of other survivors have been able to bring to light. Download us next week and stay tuned as we bring light in at least one dark place among others to where we are going.
Thanks for listening today as we explore just where are we going. Our prayer is that you have been encouraged and strengthened, and if necessary, challenged in your daily journey through life. Jesus is coming. You can fall with the night, or you can rise with the sun. The choice is yours. You can email us with questions and comments at feedback@spiritwatch.org. And if you need urgent personal spiritual help, email us at help@spiritwatch.org. We look forward to hearing from you. Please follow our podcasting at our Facebook page and our website at spiritwatch.org. This podcast is a production of Spirit Watch Ministries, taking heed that no man deceives you.